Hello, good morning everyone. This is the second class and today we'd like to go into the input and output. Okay, as usual, open your program, your IDE or your compiler, wherever you are, whether in your gadgets or in your online. You should be loading the basic program like this if you haven't done so, because with this you are ensured that your program can run. Just click run and see whether it's running without any problem. Yes, it printed out the word that you print here over at the output console down here, so it should be okay. Right, to jump into this topic today, why don't we go through an example? Okay, by using an example, we'll go through each part on its own and then we'll figure out what each of these parts means. Okay, so for today's topic, we would like to add some more stuff to the program, and the first stuff that we add is something like this. These are called variables. Okay, we'll look into how this is used, and sorry, we'll only be using one variable for now. Let's just use one. Okay, let's see what can we do with this variable. Okay, let's say we would like the computer or the program to be able to accept one number from the user and do something with that number. Okay, let's say we ask the user, please enter a number. Okay, and how are we accepting the number? By using this new command, which is what I call cin. We have met cout before. Cout is used for you to display on the output panel, and cin is when you want to accept an input from the user. And also notice the different direction of the arrows. Okay, it's not actually arrows, but you know what I mean. Alright, so what can we do with it? Well, we can process the number that's being entered by doing so. Okay, let's say I would like to write a program that accepts a number, and then we find out the square of that number. Okay, what is a square? Square is just a number times by itself, right? So what do we do with this program is we do it like so. Okay, let me just type this all out and see the result, and then I come back to explain each part of the program. Okay, let's run this and see what happens. Remember the question, you are asked to write a program to accept a number, and then your program will tell you the square of it, the square value. Alright, so please enter a number. Look at the bottom part here. Please enter a number. Let's say you enter number 5 and you press enter. So the program will tell you that the square of this number is 25. Yes, 5 squared is 25. Okay, why don't we run it again? Okay, another tip when doing programming, always test your program over and over again. Just because your program can run once doesn't mean that it can run all the time. Okay, so let's test with another number. Let's test with a bigger number, 12, and press enter. The square of this number is 144. Yes, you know 12 times 12 is 144. Correct. So this program runs well, runs okay. And as a good tip also, I would encourage you to always save your program once it's running smoothly. Okay, so open up your favorite notepad or note-taking text editor. Sorry, that's the right name for it, the text editor, and you save it somewhere in the folder right at the desktop, like what I've been using before, and put in the file name as something that is reasonably understandable for you to study, so that later on when you want to study, you just open up the right file. Okay, for this one I put in input output because you're gonna learn quite a number of input output programs, and this is for squaring the number. So you save it, you can play along with this file, and then once the program runs again, you save it again. Okay, that's a very simple but efficient tip as a programmer. Okay, right. So why don't we dive into parts of this program where we have changed and what it means. Okay, so the only things that you have changed are two places. One is here, yeah, one is here, and the other one is here, where you have added in the another instruction atau command, which is cin, and also a bit of operation here, mathematical operation, arithmetic operation. That's all. Okay, so coming back to here, this is what we call variables. Variables are things, basically are just a memory in the program, in the computer, that you can store stuff. Okay, you can store strings, you can store images, you can store data, you can store all sorts of things. But for the purpose of this class, all you are storing are numbers. Okay, numbers. That's all you have to do. You are storing numbers. But in order for you to call a memory place a variable, you have to name it. Okay, and names can be anything, but I would suggest something that is recognizable and understandable. For this particular example, I'm using the letter A as the name of this variable. And in programming, they are quite particular in terms of the types of data that you are storing. Okay, numbers cannot be mixed with strings. For example, words cannot be mixed with numbers. And within the number category, there are also different types of numbers. There are integers, there are big numbers, there are small numbers, different categories. So for you to name it, you have also to specify the type of data that you want to put in. So for this particular example, I specified that the name of the variable is A, and the category of data to be stored in this A is just integers, and integers you have to declare it as int. Okay, so for other types of integers, there are different ways of declaring the variable. We will go through it later, but for this particular example, the number is an integer and you have to tell it so by typing int, integer, and always end your line with semicolon. Okay, that's it. That's it for the first part of the change that I'm going through. For the second part, a simple one, but all you have to remember that for every input that you ask the user to put in, you have to specify a separate cin for it. Okay, so if you want to have two numbers, you need to have two cins. Okay, that's all you have to remember. Okay, for each input, you have to type one cin, and remember the direction of these arrows. That's all. Again, end it with a semicolon. Right, and the final one is the arithmetic operation. Right, arithmetic operation in programming, in any programming language, is the same. What I mean the same is that if you want to add two numbers, you use the plus symbol. So for addition, it's always the symbol plus. So for subtraction, it's always minus. Multiplication is always times, but the symbol for keyboard is the asterisk. It's not X, remember that. And for division, it's always the forward slash. Okay, it's not the division symbol that you normally see. And there is this other operator, which I leave it to you to study on your own. Okay, and what's its function. Okay, so for arithmetic operation, these are the operators. So on how to use it, you can use it this way. This is the straightforward way. I've introduced to you the use of this, which is to combine things within cout. If you are not familiar, look back in my first video. In cout statement, you can combine statements by using this. Okay, you have to add two arrows and then you can combine two things, and things here can mean statement like this, or can mean operation like this. Okay, so what happens if I change the symbol to plus? What will happen? Yes, what you're doing, practically doing, is you are creating a program that calculates the double. Yeah. Okay, let's run it. Let's test it. Is a number. The double of this number is 26, so it's correct. So all you have to do, if you are ever asked to find square or the volume or the double or the addition, all you have to do is copy this structure and change the operation here. But remember, if you use two variables, make sure you use two cins. That's all. Okay, and for the introduction of this class, that's all there is to it. We'll take a break and we'll go through the exercise later. Bye bye. Alright, we come back to our exercise for today's class. What if you are asked to write a program that accepts two numbers and you need to find out its sum? I think you can already figure out how to do this by our last example. But let's have a look. Accept two numbers. Yes, this was the program that we last used. Okay, let's start with the top. Remember that we want to accept two numbers, so that means we have to have two variables. Okay, let's call it A and B. A and B, please enter two numbers. Okay, change it. Why don't we go through the example and see whether it's running or not, and then I will explain to you what works and what not, and what each part that we change means. Okay, we have to have two numbers and we want to find out the sum of that number. Yeah, so A plus B, and see what happens. Click run. Right, please enter two numbers. Okay, the way to enter two numbers is like this. Okay, enter the first number, and to enter the second one, you press either space bar or enter. Okay, why don't we try space bar first? 12 and 20, and then you press enter. The sum of this number is 32. It's correct. Okay, let's run it again. Like I said in the first part of this class, always test your program again and again. Okay, let's add some bigger number, 69, and this time I would like to press enter instead. Enter, and you enter the second number, which is something that I can test. 12. Some of this number is 101. Correct. 89 plus 12 is 101, of course. Right, so let's go back to the program. And I'll explain it a bit to you. Let's make it a teeny bigger. Right, so as you can see, we are using two numbers, so naturally you'll have to add more variables. So you add one more variable by changing this part here. Both numbers are still integers, so you can still use the same declaration, variable declaration. All you have to do is just add a comma. Okay, comma, not semicolon, but comma in between them, and then you end the line with a semicolon. Okay, of course you can call it some other names. For example, yes, number 1, yes, and the second one you call it number 2. Yes, you can do that as well, no problem at all, as long as there are certain rules to it. And I leave it to you to look up the rules for naming variables. Okay, that's one homework for you if you wish. But for me, the shortcut is just to use one alphabet. That's all. Okay. Okay, coming back to the second part that we changed. Of course, we changed the question. Please enter two numbers before see out instruction. But for the input part, you have to add in an additional input statement. Okay. It's basically the same thing. All you have to do is change the variable name over here. So what I normally did is copy the whole line and paste it to the line below it. Okay, and change the variable name. And also at the final statement, so that the program can find the sum or the addition of these two numbers, all you have to change is the operation, the arithmetic operation over here. Okay, and imagine if the question changes into, okay, please enter two numbers and find out the product of these numbers. What do you do? Yes, all you have to do is change this symbol to multiplication symbol, which in programming or in any programming is the symbol asterisk. Okay, and of course the sentence have to change plus the product. Okay, so let's run it as usual. Let's make it smaller so that you can see it. Or rather, why don't we make this bigger so you can see? Please enter two numbers, 7 space and the answer should be 56, exactly like what you've known all this along. So yeah, so this program works just like the first program. Copy it, paste it somewhere, and you are happy to go. Okay, so in this case, if you're like me, you always collect the same number of files closer together. So name it in such a way that the first part is the class name, input output, and the second one is the example, the kind of thing that you're trying to do, addition or product. So that when you study, you can straight away go to the topic's name and look up at the specific examples that you're doing, okay, and look at the programming state. So let's look at the second example. I always prepare 2 examples for you, so don't worry, you have lots of time to do this. Right, so the second one is a bit trickier, but it's nonetheless doable with what you know already by today. The question goes like this: create a program that accepts a value which is the radius of a circle, and to find out the volume of that circle. Okay, I leave it to you to find out the formula for the volume of a circle, of a sphere, which you should have known by heart by now. And yeah, so let's write a program for it. Okay, so let's go back to this program. Now we're only using one variable, so you delete the second variable, the letter B, or why don't we call it radius or rad, okay, so that it's a bit more different than the first one that we do. Please enter the radius. Let's change the question a bit, okay, and for this one, yes, what do we change it into? Yes, the name of the variable that we just declared just now, which is rad, and we don't need the second one, so we delete it. Right, so the volume, we change the statement of the outcome. Right, the volume of this sphere is, which is what? 4 divided by 3 times pi times radius, the cube of the radius, right? So rad, you don't have to remember to multiply it 3 times, that will work as well. But before I run this program, I would like to mention a few things. Everything will happen if I just run it this way. Remember that this is a mathematical operation, so just like a normal operation, you have priorities, right? So with priorities, certain operations get done first and certain operation gets done last. Yeah, so if you're like me, you're a bit particular about the order of these things. This is what I will do. Okay, let's see if it works or not. Let's run it. Oh, error. See, pi was not declared in this scope. Right, to us we know that pi is 5, but to a computer, like I said in the first video, you have to tell it everything. So in its eyes, pi is another name for a variable, so you can't use pi. So what do you use instead? Yes, the number of pi, which is 3.1419. Let's see if we can run this. Please enter radius here. Okay, 3 cm. The volume of this sphere is 84.8313. Right, you got the answer. There's no error. But did any one of you check whether this is the right solution, the right answer? Okay, this is another tip as a programmer. Just because your program runs without any error doesn't mean that your program is correct. Okay, and this is something that we look for in your exam as well. Just because there's no error doesn't mean that it's correct. And let me tell you up front that this is not the right answer. The reason why I'm showing you this is because I want to show you why it's wrong. In fact, you can use your calculator, use your mobile phone's calculator and see what is the answer. Okay, see, if your radius is 3, the answer is 113 and 1. But what we got was here 84.83. So there must be something wrong in your program. Okay, in fact, if you're using calculator by now, you know that the answer is wrong also. So what went wrong with your program, although there are no errors? Okay, let me remind you about the numbers and the data types. Remember that in computer programming, they cannot mix different data types. In this case, we are declaring red as an integer, but look at the numbers. You are using non-integer numbers, and yet you are mixing with integer numbers. Okay, so in order to resolve that, let's say you have this kind of error in the future, all you have to do is change this into, there are two things you have to do: change all numbers into non-integer numbers. You have to change your variable into non-integer number as well. Okay, so in programming, in C++, there are two ways to do it, but I always go for this data type so that it can cover both the big number and small numbers. Okay, so let's see whether it gives you the right answer or not this time. Okay, enter the radius. Let's use 3 again and see whether you got the right answer now or not. Yes, now you got 113.1, exactly the same. Copy it and save it in your text file, input output. This is for volume. Here, volume. As you can imagine, you can go back to this example and change it. For example, if the question asks you, please enter the size of a rectangle and find its volume, for example, if given the height. Yeah, so you can just change the formula and make sure that you are using the right data types, not integer. Okay, and I leave it to you with the homework. Accept numbers and find the total, the difference, and the product values. Yeah, okay, so you should be able to do it with what you have learned today. So this one is not graded, but what will be graded is the one that I post on Subtraction. Okay, have fun and happy coding. Bye.